All right, hello, Burnsville Psych. We're going to be talking about sleep disorders tonight. And when we do this, we're basically talking about four of the sleep disorders you're going to be responsible for. The first of which is insomnia. When we're talking about sleep disorders, we're talking about sleep problems. So, for example, with insomnia, we're talking about poor quality sleep that is related to one or more of the following: difficulty falling asleep, waking up frequently during the night, or you have a hard time getting back to sleep um, after you wake up, waking up too early in the morning, or having a feeling of unrefreshing sleep. My guess is that whoever's listening to this can relate to this happening at least one time in their life, if not on several different occasions. Notice we're not talking about how many hours it takes or how long it takes you to fall asleep or how many hours of sleep you get overall. Surprisingly, some people can sleep regularly for 6 hours a night and they wake up feeling refreshed and they don't have any other issues, and that seems to be the number for them. I think that that's not the average, but that does indeed happen. What we are talking about here is poor quality sleep, and I think that's the key piece to remember. Um, so sleep disorders are sleep problems, and the first thing that we need to understand is that if you have insomnia or if you have any of the other sleep problems that are on this list, there are things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep. And frankly, the discussion that we had about poor quality of sleep and some of the potential issues that come up because of that, it is worth putting in some energy to get better quality sleep. So, insomnia. This happens to us all. Does that mean we all have insomnia? Not necessarily. And so that's where we get into the three kinds of insomnia. And I'm going to say that we can probably all relate to this idea of short-term or transient insomnia. One night here or there, or even up to a couple of weeks here and there, but it's kind of an isolated incident and then it goes away and then you're back to normal, refreshing sleep. That's called transient insomnia. Not much of a thing to worry about, and frankly, it's probably due to some kind of stress or you have a lot going on or something like that. Intermittent insomnia says we have on and off episodes. So you have insomnia for a while, then it goes away, then it comes back, then it goes away. And it's this back and forth that goes on for periods of time. That is going to be something that might be more worth looking at, but still maybe not necessarily the worst thing that you could deal with. The one that we're really worried about here is chronic insomnia. And when you talk about something that's chronic, it means basically that it is going on and on and on. It's constant. So it says most nights lasting a month or longer. Chronic insomnia would start to get old after some time. And this is where we might really start to think, what kinds of decisions am I making? What kinds of choices am I making? Can I reduce some of this, good morning, some of the negatives? So what are causes of insomnia? We have a whole list here. Stress in your life is going to interfere with sleep for sure. Environmental noise, if it's noisy when you're trying to be calm and sleepy, that's going to get in the way. Uh, some medications have side effects that impact your sleep, and that is one of those unfortunate byproducts of taking medications, so that could be something. Extreme temperatures, obviously, if it's too hot or too cold, that could be a problem. Changes in environment, all of these things are fairly typical um, if you have chronic insomnia and it is going on, and there might be only so many things you can do to reduce it. Um, One of the best things to do is to try to have a very even regulated sleep schedule so that for the most part you're going to bed and getting up at the same time every night. Other tips that they'll give you for insomnia would be things like having a routine before bed so that you get your body used to the idea that it's bedtime is coming up and it's time for sleep. So reading for a while or doing some quiet activity, taking a bath, doing any kinds of things that will calm yourself down. You know, drinking a bunch of caffeine before bed is a bad idea. Um, Exercising before bed is a bad idea. Any kind of hustle and bustle is going to be not so good. Sleeping in a room with a TV is not going to be good for insomnia. Surprisingly, alcohol is bad for sleep. It actually interferes with the sleep cycles. So some people think, oh, I'll just have a glass of wine. Obviously, these are people that are 21 and older, but I'll have a glass of wine and that'll help me get to sleep. That actually makes it worse and kind of compounds the problem. So that's not a way to go. The drugs like Tylenol PM or any of those kinds of things, again, short term they're okay, but if you have chronic insomnia and you're trying to use that as the way to get past your insomnia, it will not help and it'll actually get in the way. Who is more likely to have insomnia? Older people, females, people suffering with depression. Depression actually has quite a bit of sleep-related issues connected to it. So we're noticing that sleep and the rest of your life are not disconnected, that the things that are going on during the day impact what's going on at night. So one of the things that we can talk about is trying to change your lifestyle so that you have less sleep-related problems. And that's a harder discussion to have when it gets into kind of the culture that we're all living in, this hustle and bustle lifestyle. If you go to bed thinking, oh, I'm never going to get to sleep, I'm never going to get to sleep, or the opposite of that, which I think we've all done, okay, if I get to sleep now, I can still squeeze out 6.5 hours of sleep, that kind of thing is going to interfere. All right, I just had a phone call, and I'm not sure where we left off, but I think we were talking about thinking that it's going to be impossible to get to sleep. That's not going to help. We talked about caffeine and the connection to adenosine, and that it actually blocks some of those signals that your brain try to send, saying you should be tired and sleepy, go to bed now. So caffeine use is going to get in the way. We talked about other chemicals, alcohol. Nicotine is a stimulant, so those things are actually going to interfere with good, healthy sleep. Irregular sleep schedules we talked about, and the idea that you want to go to bed and get up at the same time every night, that's going to be important. Your body then gets into a rhythm and knows, okay, this is sleep time, okay, this is wake time, and you reduce some of those problems. The last one, excessive napping. I mean, this makes sense that if you are having a hard time sleeping at night, but then you're sleeping during the day, you might not be tired when it's time to go to bed. The problem is sometimes you're tired during the day. So I guess to keep on track, one idea would be to just tough it out and make it tonight, go to bed a little earlier, and then try to get back on a regular routine or schedule. So that's insomnia. Number 2 here we have sleep apnea. And sleep apnea is fairly serious and a sleep disorder that is becoming more and more known and understood, partly because more people are going to sleep labs and getting diagnosed with sleep apnea. And basically, sleep apnea is all about breathing problems. So basically, it says here that generally you're not getting enough oxygen, and that's waking you up. So the two types are central sleep apnea and obstructive sleep apnea. Obstructive sleep apnea is the one that is much more common, where basically the person is trying to breathe, the effort to breathe is there, but there is something obstructing or blocking the airflow in and out of their nose or mouth. That is fairly common. Central sleep apnea is where your brain is not sending the right signals to breathe, and that's fairly rare. But obstructive sleep apnea is something that is becoming more and more common. So here's a picture of your nasal passages and in your mouth, and so the obstruction is right here. This area is where the air is not getting through, and it might be any number of reasons, some kind of abnormality in your throat or some other kinds of physical issues. In some cases, people that are overweight are having more issues, and that's coming up. The solution is this crazy mask that this guy is wearing called a CPAP machine. And basically what it does is blows air through this little mask and keeps that passageway open. But it's like, you know, when a dog is riding in a car and has its head out the window, that's what it feels like, air blowing up your nose all night. Okay, it'll keep the sleep apnea from happening, but you have to get used to that machine for sure. Recently, dentists are prescribing these mouth guards that are supposed to then fit in your mouth to keep the airways open. So that's another alternative that's newer. Who is at risk for sleep apnea? Again, people that are loud snorers tend to have more issues because that's what the snoring is again. The air is having a hard time getting in or out. That's where the noise comes from. Overweight, high blood pressure, physical abnormalities, all of those things are increasing the likelihood that someone might be prone to sleep apnea. And the problem again is I think sometimes people, because they're asleep, don't even know that they're doing this. They're waking up hundreds of times during the night in some cases, but not waking up enough to actually be conscious. So they're not getting quality sleep, and so they're having the same kinds of problems as people that have um, other kinds of sleep-related issues. Uh, it says here that alcohol and sleeping pills increase the frequency of breathing pauses, so therefore those would be things that you don't want to use to try to fix your sleep. Again, talking to a doctor, getting diagnosed, getting something else to solve that problem. Last, we have some of the potential consequences of sleep apnea, and it's everything from kind of annoying to potentially dangerous. And so this is definitely worth finding out about. And again, there are sleep labs where they'll have you come in. It looks like a hotel room, and you lay down, and they hook you up to this equipment, and then they monitor your sleep during the night, and they can definitely diagnose if you have this problem. We have two left, and we'll go fairly quickly. Narcolepsy is another sleep disorder. And it basically says that um, people fall asleep at inappropriate times and in inappropriate places. And this comes up quite a bit in movies. I think the one that students are always telling me about is the movie Rat Race. I think it was the Mr. Bean actor was falling asleep in the wrong times in the wrong places, and that's hilarious. Unless it's you, then it's not so funny. Other things that come along with narcolepsy sometimes, cataplexy, sleep paralysis, and hypnagogic hallucinations, all of which sound not so good. Cataplexy is the loss of muscle function while remaining conscious. So basically, you're awake, but your muscles start to give out, and you'll literally fall down. Sleep paralysis is something that, and by the way, you can have these without narcolepsy, but these often are paired up. Sleep paralysis is the idea that right when you're falling asleep or right when you're waking up, there's a brief period of time where you have the inability to talk or move. You're basically paralyzed until you're all the way awake. And that's an interesting, potentially frightening idea if it happens to you. And then these hallucinations sometimes come along with the narcolepsy, which makes it sound even worse. Generally, narcolepsy is a less known sleep disorder, and more research is kind of coming out. But the problem is that it's a fairly small chunk of the population that has this. So there's not as many people to study, therefore less information exists. Um, the last one that we have is sudden seasonal affective disorder, and we just saw the lamp that people use, and I'll get back to that in a second. But basically, in the northern latitudes, is that latitudes or longitudes? I can never remember. In the north, where you have less sunlight, people deal with depression, and the reason is that they are getting less melatonin, which is this chemical that relates to sleep, and you get that from exposure to the sun. Okay, so what is one of the ways to deal with it? You have this lamp that mimics the effects of the sun. People sit in front of it for a while every night, and then they get that melanin produced in their body. Depression during the winter is a fairly common thing that people in Minnesota relate to, and you talk to people that have this kind of pop up for them, but is something that while it might be fairly common to have some of these symptoms, the severe form of seasonal affective disorder is still a relatively small number, but again, can be treated if people take the appropriate steps to try to get that melatonin going. There are also supplements. I know people take melatonin supplements, so there are different ways that people can deal with this. Okay, so that is the four sleep disorders that we're talking about. Insomnia, sleep apnea, narcolepsy, seasonal affective disorder. Those are the four you're going to be responsible for. And you should bring any questions you have to class tomorrow, and we can deal with those. Thanks. Bye.